Dateology Coach podcast. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Hey, Sarah. So, did you hear that the DA in Los Angeles called a press conference for tomorrow and invited all of the Menendez brothers' family?
I didn't.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yes. So,
What's the deal with their family? Are they standing by them? Or have they?
100%. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Both sides, with the exception, I think, like one uncle and aunt, and they go fuck
I
themselves.
imagine this is a bit of a reversal from their stance in the 90s.
No.
Oh really, this whole time they've been
This
like,
whole time
oh wow,
because
okay.
they
Okay.
this case had they brought something like 50 witnesses
Yeah. Okay.
that witnessed the father physically abusing them or
Uh-huh.
witnessed instances in the home where he would take one of the boys up to the bedroom and
Ugh,
Kitty, the mother, would say, "You don't go down that hallway."
really?
Oh, the mother knew. That
Yeah.
was one of the things they found out. See, what people don't know about this story is that there was a buildup. This wasn't
Sure.
just we decided to kill our parents for the money.
Right, right, right.
At
Yeah.
least I'm making an assumption there. I don't believe that.
No, it doesn't seem that way.
The weekend leading up to that, Lyle's home from college, and Erik is arguing with the father because
Hmm.
Erik wants to go to Stanford and move out, be away from
Yeah.
this fucking animal. And the father says, "No, you're going to go to
Really.
UCLA and you're going to live here."
Ugh.
And Erik was just devastated because he thought he was finally getting out.
Right.
So he goes to
So
Lyle,
that would make him feel a bit desperate, I imagine.
pretty desperate, but it gets worse. So he goes to Lyle, and that's when he finally tells Lyle about the abuse, what's been
Oh,
going
so
on.
they didn't know.
Lyle didn't know.
Okay.
Lyle didn't know.
Was the father, but I thought the father was abusing both of them.
He did. He abused
Yeah.
Lyle first, and then Lyle told him to stop, and he stopped, and he said, and that was the moment that I realized he stopped because he started
Oh, I
abusing
see.
Erik.
So, okay. Yeah, but the brothers didn't know about each other's history of
Correct.
abuse. Yeah.
Correct.
Isn't that
So,
something?
can you imagine? I can imagine. I
Well,
can
yeah,
imagine that.
I can
So,
too. But it's just like, you live with someone in the same house.
right?
Well, hmm.
Yep.
All right, go
And
on.
so now Erik is like, I'm never going to get out of here. He goes
Yeah.
to Lyle, you've got to help me. I don't know what I'm going to do here. And that's when they
Yeah.
were like, you know,
They started
I,
making some plans.
they started making some plans
Some ham-fisted plans,
and
but some plans.
wildly ham-fisted plans.
Yeah.
So the night of the murders, they get into a fight. The father gets into a fight with the both of them
Uh-huh.
because they want to go out. And he's like, "You're not leaving the house."
Ugh.
And he says, "Erik, you get upstairs. I'll be up there in a minute." And so you know what was going to happen,
Hmm.
right? So Lyle steps in and he's like, "You're never going to touch my brother again."
Nice.
And the father says, "He's my son, and I can do with him what I want."
Hmm.
If that doesn't tell you how Jose, the father, just dehumanized these young
Right.
kids. And so Lyle gets mad at the mother. He's like, "You're okay with this?
Sure.
You're just gonna let this happen?" She's like, "Oh, you think I don't know what's been going on? You think I don't know?" So not only does Lyle find out that Erik's being abused, but they
Right.
find out that the mother's known the whole time.
I mean, that would send me over the edge, I
Listen,
believe.
that would send me over the edge, and
I'd be 100% done at that
right
point.
at that point.
Hmm.
And so that's why when people say, "Well, it was premeditated in the sense
Of
that
course it was.
they bought the guns
Right.
and they truly believed that their parents, this is what they say, they believed that their parents were going to kill them." And I'll be honest, this is where I'm kind of like, I don't know but
Right.
what I do know, and I told this story on TikTok. I've talked before about being a survivor of childhood sex abuse,
Mm.
and I had my godfather, salt of the earth man. Let me tell you, he bought me this beautiful red dress for my birthday, and he leaned down and he whispered, "You're gonna look beautiful in this, or you're gonna look so pretty in this."
Hmm.
Now, the man that abused me, he he had whispered in my ear
Oh no.
similarly. So when my godfather did this, like
Oh, it must have made your skin crawl.
My PTSD absolutely got triggered, and I was
Yeah.
convinced in that moment he's going to abuse me.
Mm-hmm.
He like
Sure.
he's going to molest me.
Sure.
And that's what PTSD is. It convinces you of something that there's no basis in reality.
Right. Yeah,
So
it's
you
just like fight or flight now, right now.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Your brain isn't able to rationalize or reason. It doesn't understand what's going on. It believes that you're in danger.
Mm-hmm.
So I can imagine, and I need to be clear, my godfather was never inappropriate, but he just, my father adored him.
Yeah.
Everybody adored, he's just a very honorable man. So I need to make that clear. I want to make sure there's no misunderstanding.
Right.
So I can see that these brothers in that moment, like the father had already said, go upstairs, right? So the father had
Yeah.
basically already threatened to assault him.
Mm-hmm.
So that threat was real, in my opinion. And if
Oh yeah.
they were struggling with PTSD, absolutely, I could see them believing they're going to kill us, because the father did threaten to kill them multiple times if they ever told anybody. Why do you think?
Right.
Like that's why he wanted to keep them in the house. That's why you're not going to
Yeah.
Stanford. You're going to come
Yeah,
here.
that's how this continues to work on adults, right?
Right,
Adult
right.
children. Yeah.
So just started looking into the case. The amount of misogyny in this case is just wild, wild.
Now, well, Kristen,
Yeah.
speaking of misogyny,
Yes.
I know she is deceased now, but do we have any sense of like what was going through the mom's head? Like, what was her excuse? Do we know?
She hated her kids. She told her therapist that. She hated her
Ah,
kids. She was drinking a lot. Well,
like she never wanted to have them, or
like she never wanted to have them, but also my personal belief, I think she resented those boys because Jose was having sex with them and not her.
right? That was my follow-up question. Did she hate them for like? Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, there's not like a good reason to hate your kids.
Right.
Like, did she hate them for like uh I don't know. Yeah, a reason other than like misplaced jealousy, which is like so gross.
She just hated her kids.
Yeah.
This was one of those, I could have been a beauty queen, I could have been an actress, one of those mothers
Yeah,
who
okay.
then, like resents her kids,
Well, that's gross.
right? And takes all her anger and frustration out on her kids.
Uh-huh.
They were and apparently she was molesting Lyle, the older one.
Oh.
The father would make them take showers with him when they were
Oh,
like 12, 14, old enough to be bathing alone.
well, for sure.
So I was looking into the case, trying to understand why didn't they allow in the second trial, because the first trial was, they were tried separately.
Hmm.
Both brothers' trial ended in a hung jury.
Okay.
So the next trial, when did that next trial start? 5 days after the OJ verdict
Oh, geez.
in LA,
Yeah, like anybody could pay attention to anything else.
but also they needed a win. They needed
Yeah,
a win.
they sure did.
They sure did. And I looked into why wouldn't they allow the abuse? And this is what the documentary said. Well, it didn't qualify as battered women's syndrome because they're not women,
Right.
but also the psychiatrist, the prosecution hired a psychologist, an expert to assess them, and he met with them. And he said that he didn't believe that they were suffering from PTSD because they didn't display the signs of PTSD, like flashbacks and nightmares and hypervigilance and
Okay.
um, like emotional reactions. And I read that, and I'm like, now I
It,
want to know how many men did he treat that were SAS survivors? And I'm gonna bet it's fucking none.
I mean, well, not only that, but it sounds like they did exhibit some of those symptoms, right?
Hmm. it sounds like they did, but I think maybe I don't know.
He probably was just thinking like, you don't act like a war veteran.
But see, that's just it, right? That's just it.
Yeah,
When we in the 90s, when we talked about PTSD,
that was the
most
only
of
lens we had.
that was the only lens we had. And
Literally,
men
that was
felt
it.
comfortable talking about that
Right.
because it happened because they were in war,
Right.
right? A traditionally masculine,
Well, I don't know that men were comfortable talking about it, but yeah, it was like it was not associated with
right,
anything embarrassing
right,
or shameful.
right.
Yeah.
So when you're a man and you're being SA'd,
Right. Especially by your
own
family.
father, you, men are just going to react differently because, especially at that time, we were socialized differently.
Mm-hmm.
So for this psychiatric professional to say, I don't think they have PTSD because they're not acting like they have PTSD,
Mm.
when that came at a time where men were not coming forward about this.
No, and you know what else is interesting is just like both of their ages. They're at interesting
Hmm.
periods developmentally where like I'm not going to say they shouldn't have been tried as adults, but
Hmm.
if they have this extent of trauma in their background, like
Right.
they may not be thinking like adults all the time.
They weren't. They were assessed. The older one was said to have the mental capacity, the emotional capacity of a 10-year-old,
That makes a lot of sense to me.
and the younger one of an 8-year-old.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Right?
But I'm
So,
sure because of the 90s, people were like, yeah, fucking right.
right? But
Yeah.
that is how everybody was.
Uh-huh.
Nobody believed that this happened, let alone by their father.
Well, and that they were functioning at that level.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And they also weren't taking things into consideration like cultural norms. He
Hmm.
was Cuban,
Right.
right? These are things that like you have to consider. That was not, it's sort of like how Italians, you don't go to therapy, you don't talk about it, blah blah blah. It, it's every culture I think has their own approach to this stuff. And
Mm.
for his culture, the boy's culture, you know, traditional masculinity, these boys were a victim of so much, a miscarriage of justice, just an absolute failure by their parents, but also of toxic masculinity
For sure.
because given, they were not taught or made to feel or made to feel um as though they could be emotional or talk about this stuff.
Right.
So, to you, Dr. I don't Gold
He's probably
something,
dead now, right?
probably to you, sir, boo to you, sir. Just the idea that how can, dude, this, you have one job.
Yeah.
You have one job. Just
I'm just
say,
thinking this week about how most therapists, I mean, still, like
mhm,
most mental health professionals are pretty bad at their jobs.
yep, yeah, pretty much, pretty much. Although I liked that TikTok you sent me today.
I love that creator. Yeah,
And I
I
actually
watched
think
a
it's a
ton
really
of
good
their videos.
idea.
Let's give them a little plug here.
What's her name?
Lee Tepper is their TikTok or is their name. Their
Hmm.
handle is at NBENBY_therapist.
Okay. They had the idea of they wanted to tell their audience, their followers, listen, if you ever work with me, here's a service that I provide. Let's say you want to make a TikTok about something, a
Uh-huh.
response to something,
Yeah.
or
Any kind of social media post,
a
really.
hot take.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
They said, put in the drafts,
Uh-huh.
and then in your session, let's review it together, and I'll give you
Yep.
feedback. And
Free service.
free service, and I loved it because
Hmm.
I had just watched a live from a woman who her husband left her for a younger woman, and she's making all these videos about the younger woman and about the husband, and now she's live and she's talking about it. And the whole time I'm listening to this, I'm just thinking, oh my God, please stop, please stop, please
I mean, I
stop.
feel that way about most TikToks that I see, right?
Hmm.
Just
Hmm.
We don't have to put every thought
We
on the
don't have to
internet.
put every thought out there.
Because how many times does something go viral and then you go back to find it and like their whole account is gone?
Right? Right. It's kind of like that whole when we look back at that Joshua guy last week and we looked
Yeah.
for his social media and it was gone. What did we say in one of our articles that might have started some controversy, sir?
Sorry to get us off topic from the Menendez brothers,
No,
but
that's okay. That's okay. I just felt as though the therapist, what the therapist was biased,
yeah.
completely biased.
Well, we all have biases, right? We all do. But it just, I mean, to me, it just sounds like they weren't even like really. I mean, we all have biases.
Hmm.
We all do, right?
Right.
But to me, it just sounds like they weren't even really like. It just sounds like they didn't go in with an open mind,
Right.
really. Like
Right.
they went in setting out to prove their biases,
Hmm.
right? And not to mention, it sounds like they weren't really on like the cutting edge of research.
Right. They weren't on like they weren't on the cutting edge of research. And I I'm stumbling over my words because I cannot get over the fact that a psychiatric professional would say no, no, you're
Right,
not, and not consider the cultural background, not consider that they're men.
right,
I would want to know how many male survivors of sexual abuse have you treated?
right,
Because it better be a lot.
right.
Better be a lot so that I know that what you're saying, that there's sort of a median type of response, that you're basing this on actual data.
Well, every trial, I feel like you see this on both sides, right? The expert witnesses that get selected are selected because they're friendly to either the defense or the prosecution, right?
Hmm.
But sometimes it is so obviously tipped in one side's favor that it really is just egregious.
Right.
And it's just so clear that this person's not getting a fair trial. This is one of those times.
That was one of those times. And I also want to clarify that when I was triggered, and I still to this day can be triggered,
Sure,
I
of
don't
course.
experience flashbacks. Become, I don't think I become hyper vigilant. I don't think I exhibit, look, I don't exhibit, or I don't present, my PTSD doesn't present the way people think it should. If that were me and he were assessing me, I'd be in
Right,
fucking jail.
right. It sounds like a lot of people would.
Right. Because as we know, we all process this stuff differently,
Yeah.
even PTSD.
Well, and it really sounds like his understanding of PTSD is like based on the dog meme. And I know the dog meme didn't exist in the 90s, but the one, the shepherd with the blue eyes, and he's like his face is like superimposed over an image of Vietnam. You know the one?
No.
Oh, I'm gonna send it to you right now. Hang on.
But that really, like you said, that was really the only frame of reference. The only lens that we
Vietnam,
had
yeah.
was
Yeah, that was it.
war, battle,
Mhm.
military. That was it. And
And well,
I,
and what's so crazy to me is that even like really before Vietnam, we had no notion. Well, this I guess this is an overstatement. I was about to say we had no sense of like maybe war is upsetting, but that is overstating it, right? We had the term shell shock,
mhm.
but we just like we never like put two and two together. Like, oh, all these dudes who came back from World War II became alcoholics and beat their kids. That's a weird coincidence.
Right?
Oh well,
It,
none of my business.
right. It presents differently. It can present in violence. It can,
Yeah,
it just does, and there's something about the symptoms that also bothered me because they felt really sexist.
Oh, the symptoms that he was looking
Right,
for.
right.
Okay.
You know, hypervigilance and flashbacks and night terrors and the exaggerated startle response,
I mean, yeah, just bets, right?
right?
Just
But women are encouraged. We're in tune with our emotions.
we're hyper vigilant anyway.
We're hyper vigilant fucking anyway.
Right. Yeah,
That's what
we
I
are.
mean.
Right.
That's what I mean. Dude, if hypervigilance is a sign of PTSD, we all have it,
Hmm.
right? That's what I'm saying. It presents differently. And I can't believe that I have to tell, a psychiatric professional, granted this was 30 years ago or 25 years ago,
Right.
but that's what he's used to seeing either war veterans or women, right? And I don't like the way the PTSD is being framed
Right.
as, emotional women, you know what I mean?
Hyper vigilant.
Irrational. That's what that
Hysterical.
feels like. Irrational.
Yeah.
And I don't like it.
Well, Kristen, while you're looking at these dog memes I just sent you,
Now I'm saying,
I know I said last time we talked about the Menendez brothers, but I'll say again, it was a murder, but not a crime.
it was a murder, but not a crime. Right.
Mhm.
Yep.
And we desperately need that to be an option for a verdict because they're just are people and under circumstances I'm just not willing to send to jail personally.
Right. Right. And there's just, but oh, wait a minute. But the other thing is, have you seen all the Gen Zers with their Menendez outfit, Menendez style?
That still hasn't crossed my feed, and I don't know why. Maybe it hasn't crossed my TikTok feed because Charlie XX dropped another album. Yeah, that's why it hasn't gotten to me yet.
Maybe.
But no. But I mean, we've seen this before too, right? Like they got really taken with what's her name?
Yeah.
Gypsy Rose Lee, is that her name?
Right. Yeah.
The yeah,
No,
the
Gypsy Lee Blanchard.
Gypsy Lee
Gypsy
Blanchard.
Rose Lee, I think, is a singer or an
I
actor, some
oh
sort of celebrity.
I don't know. Okay, but thank you. Yeah, Gypsy Lee Blanchard or
Gypsy
Gypsy Rose
Rose.
Blanchard. What
Yeah.
Gypsy Blanchard? I don't know.
Gypsy. Just fucking call her Gypsy.
The kid who I think she was like 16 or 17
Hmm.
killed her mom after many many years of her mom medically abusing her.
Hmm.
So again, I mean, murder but not a
But
crime.
right, but
Get it?
the thing that the whole argument against the Menendez brothers was the premeditation. And if
Right,
you don't look into this case, right? If you don't look into it, you think, oh, it was premeditated and they should get out of jail. Look into this case.
right,
It really wasn't that premeditated.
right.
Yes, they bought guns, but Netflix had a documentary that came out last Monday. It's very good. I really liked it. And they were both saying that when the police got there, they never tested our hands for gunshot
Okay.
residue. The shell casings were still in the trunk of Lyle's car or Eric's car, and they both said if they had just asked, like we would have caved.
They
That's
didn't ask?
nothing. They did nothing. They just let them go.
Huh.
They just let them go. And that's what I'm saying. I don't think they
Wow.
expected, I don't know if they expected to get away with it. Like, if they did, boy, are they bad at it. But then you are
Right.
dealing with someone with a mentality of a 10-year-old,
Sure.
right? So
Huh.
the way they talked was we were both so broken
Yeah.
after like that night, but after the years of abuse, if
Right.
they had just asked,
Wow. No, I believe that.
so
Because it sounds like they each thought that there was an end date. in mind,
Yes,
right?
because Lyle was supposed to go back to Princeton in New Jersey,
Right.
and he stayed behind to help Eric.
Yeah.
And Eric thought he was going to Stanford. No, he was going to UCLA. Yeah, terrible. Terrible. There's just so much that people don't know about that case. And the second trial, they wouldn't allow the sex abuse in it.
That's bananas.
This is what I mean. Crazy.
Like that's the
Crazy.
whole case.
That is the whole case, but nobody believed them.
Well, it's disappointing how far we've not come in that regard, right? Like how many how many cases do you hear about now where like it seems like sex abuse ought to be at the center of the arguments, right?
Hmm.
But it I don't know, it very frequently gets minimized as like, oh, just the thing that happens.
Well, speaking of minimized, at the end of the documentary, Eric Menendez says, I want to be really clear about something. I want to make sure that what we did is not minimized.
Yeah,
I mean, right? Like we killed our parents,
sure.
and they're not acting like, well, we were totally justified. They both have expressed deep remorse and regret. And what gets me when I see these Menendez style videos and these girls all swooning because of the actors who were cast to play the brothers in the
Mm,
in the Netflix series. What a lot of people are overlooking, everyone's very busy saying free the Menendez brothers, and absolutely they should be freed. But
yeah.
people also need to remember there are going to be thousands of cases
Yeah.
where sex abuse was not allowed in, they didn't get a fair trial, they were
Right.
wrongfully accused, and they will never see the light of day,
Yeah, we'll
and
never even know about them.
they'll never get their day in court.
Right.
And it's so important to remember that when we see all of this. Free them, free them. Yeah, free them. But at the same time, let's talk about the fact that they the groundswell of support has a lot to do with the fact that they were conventionally attractive and white passing.
Uh-huh.
And that's it. Like,
And wealthy.
and wealthy.
Right.
But that was also part of why they didn't get a fair trial because they figured, oh, wealthy, these are just
Yeah,
spoiled
I
kids.
remember, I mean, I was pretty young when this all went down. I think I was like 10 or so. And so obviously I wasn't following it, but I was more closely following the OJ case, as we all were. But
Hmm.
like I remember the news coverage being like, oh, poor little rich boys. Like and really just making them out to be like psychopathic, cold-blooded killers.
Right. Well, they didn't help themselves. The first time they appeared in court and they're in those suits, they did not help themselves.
Mm. They're
The,
victims of being good looking, huh? And wealthy.
well, they looked like pricks.
They had
They
affluenza.
did. Afflu-
Speaking of affluenza,
Yes.
I don't rem I as I recall, and I'm not certain on this, but I want to say that term was coined by the judge in the Brock Turner case. Does that sound right to you?
No.
Okay.
Maybe, but
Well, maybe it wasn't then, but I know it came up then as well. Um,
another example of the justice system just completely failing a woman,
right.
right?
And now Brock Turner lives in the town where I grew up.
Oh,
He lives in my hometown. So he's going by his middle name, which I can't remember what it is now, but and he's like tried to grow his hair out. But apparently he has not enjoyed a moment of peace.
good,
Because the
good,
town where I grew up is not large, and we all know this motherfucker.
good. As he shouldn't. As he shouldn't.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just like people need to let's keep some perspective. They do deserve to be released, but understand that there are going to be a lot of people that
Well, and this is why
aren't, you know?
survivors very often don't even come forward, right?
Right,
Like they don't, why go through this
right,
if you're not going to get a
right.
fair trial? I get it.
They weren't even going to, they did not want to talk about it.
Sure, who
They did
won?
not. The only reason they talked about it was because Lyle wrote Eric a letter.
Which got
And
screened, I'm sure.
Well, Lyle said, please destroy, but Erik didn't because he said this was the first time Lyle was this kind of vulnerable with me, and that letter meant so much to me. But in the letter, not only do they admit to killing their parents, or does Lyle admit it, but Lyle alludes to and talks about the sex abuse.
Yeah.
And so now they had to talk about it.
Right.
Right. Like now they had to talk about it. And people think that they just made up this argument. No. The reason it was brought into the trial was because this letter was found.
Right.
So there's just so many things about this case that worked
gut
against.
wrenching, but also probably pretty common.
Yes.
And we just don't hear about it because people destroy the letters, or
right.
They don't get a fair trial anyway because they had a public defender.
Yeah, but also something else that was discovered was an essay that Lyle wrote when he was 14.
Oh no, what's that? What's that like?
It's called "I Will Change Your Verdict."
Huh.
And it's a letter where he's advocating, and it's not clear if it's a real man or not, but he's trying to convince a jury not to sentence a man to death for murdering the pedophile that molested his son. 14.
And
he wrote that.
So, again, like there were signs.
There were. Here's the thing. Listen, there were signs with me too. I went from an A plus student to a C and D. And my father just never, I don't know why he never addressed it. I don't know. But that was a huge one.
Yeah.
How do I go from, I'm not exaggerating when I say fucking A plus to C and D. And it just got ignored. I don't know that I want to talk about this.
You don't have to.
No, I know. Parents, I think they just don't want to confront their failure. Because oftentimes they suspect something's off, but they don't want to know what it is, so they don't dig deeper.
I don't know. I mean, obviously time has really shifted our view on a lot of things. On children especially, right? And just the notion that they have agency. Or should have agency, that they're their own people, fully formed when they come out, and not property. Like that really is a big shift,
right?
Within not a lot of time. Like that shift really just occurred, I would say, like to kids born like in the 90s and beyond, right? So Lyle and Erik definitely had an old school dad, an old school mom, and it just got ignored.
Yeah,
people didn't want to make a fuss about it.
No, it wasn't just that. It was because
friends. They didn't want to interrupt the family dynamic. Like,
it was because the father was so powerful.
Well, that, or there's that element of shit. Like, there's so many layers to it, right?
And you do know that another boy came forward.
Yes.
Right? Another boy from one of the singers from Menudo came forward.
And pretty credibly, it sounds like.
Very credibly said that their father had raped him too.
So, I mean, there's undoubtedly more, right? But I'm sure all these people just want to move on with their lives and are glad he's dead.
Yeah.
As am I.
Good
riddance, sir.
They deserved every single bullet. I said what I said, and that's how I feel. All right. Thank you for joining us for this week's Datology Coach podcast. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at DatologyPod and My Character Analysis. You can also follow me on Instagram at TheChristanM, TheChristanM. And make sure to follow us on TikTok as well as YouTube at Datology Coach and My Character Analysis. To listen to our weekly members-only episodes, go to patreon.com/datologycoach and subscribe. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.